What is going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Very Cold Lasagna, the podcast that houses a safe and open listening platform for casual, cold, and even the dumbest takes on the world of WWE, AEW, the NFL, and the wide world of wrestling and sports in general. I'm your host, DylanLasagna. Welcome to today's episode number 30. And it's been almost 6 months since we started this thing. And even though the growth has been very slow, as expected, that's how it is when you start a new podcast or anything new in general. I am very grateful. Very grateful, and I really like what I'm doing here on Very Cold Lasagna. You know, making content, I actually have a passion. I actually want to do these kind of episodes, like whether it's audio or video, or like making like thumbnails or putting out like Instagram or Twitter posts to promote the show. Like, I've honestly felt really engaged in something media for a first time in a while, to be honest with you, and I'm pretty happy about it. I really am pretty happy about it. And as in regards to this little thing that I started back in January, I want to thank all of you that listen to my very casual ass talking about wrestling, talking about sports, for a guy that honestly doesn't know like much. That's not like, oh, I know this analytic that Steph Curry put up on like Game 5 of the 2015 NBA Finals when I did that retro review, or you know, the 10,000th time that John Cena won the WWE title. You know, I'm not as I say, I'm not an analytics guy. I'm a very casual to mid fan of wrestling and sports, and analytics are just a number. Like, I care more about how the wrestlers or the athletes perform. How do they do on the field? The numbers don't reflect that. So that's why I created Very Cold Lasagna. I want to not only express my very stupid takes, but also talk about how did they do? How did they really do on the field or in the ring or whatnot? But I just want to thank you. I really simply want to thank all of you that come by, listen to the show, whether it's on YouTube or Anchor, Spotify, Apple, and especially on YouTube. I know I'm more of a YouTube guy that comments on the episodes, especially lately. Like, the YouTube activity has been pretty active, but also the audio side of things, there also been some pretty good activity in the last few weeks too. So regardless, I really appreciate the support. I really am thankful and grateful for the growth we have achieved in these last 6 months, and I really hope we could continue to keep it rolling in this second half of the year. And I'm kind of excited. I'm pretty excited. Obviously, I keep my expectations on a neutral level. I want to exceed the highest ceiling possible, but you know, we have to assure we can reach that goal by meeting a neutral level. So I got some things planned, both for the podcast in terms of episodes, and also hopefully I can get some things going outside of it, like, you know, YouTube stuff, extras. I know YouTube side of things are always come first priority, but that's just the name of the game. So if you want to continue supporting me here on Very Cold Lasagna, make sure to subscribe on YouTube and turn on that notification bell so you'll be notified of each and every episode that comes out when it comes out, as well as you get those exclusive extras, rants, news that doesn't appear on a Very Cold Lasagna podcast like this one, and a bunch of other stuff that I like to put out on this YouTube channel. And if you want to listen to me on the audio side of things, make sure you do so on Anchor, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify, and listen to me on those platforms. And if you want to follow me on social media, please do so on Twitter and Instagram at Very Cold Lasagna. So before we get into the main topic of the day of this episode, I wanted to do something not really all that different, but I just wanted to go through the week in wrestling because, well, I just wanted to do a little catch up, I guess, to see what happened in WWE, because honestly I haven't been really paying too much attention to wrestling for the last couple of weeks because the NBA playoffs has been on, and long story short, with the NBA playoffs, it's been kind of been a drag, to be honest with you. The Flippers finally got eliminated. Somehow they managed to survive like throughout the Western Conference Finals, and the Phoenix Suns are going to the NBA Finals. Chris Paul, the point guard that's been around for 16 years, is finally going to his first NBA Finals, so I guess I'm happy for him. And the Milwaukee Bucks are one game away from going to the NBA Finals, but they're not going to win it, even with Giannis Antetokounmpo. So at this point, it's pretty much the Phoenix Suns NBA Finals to lose, and that's pretty much that. So that being said, let's talk some wrestling. Let's go through these highlights of Monday Night Raw and AEW Dynamite, which made its return to Wednesday nights. And I know some AEW fans that were bitching and moaning about the NBA. The NBA is taking our precious Wednesday nights because of the Eastern Conference Finals and the freaking fucking playoffs. Get away from my precious AEW for Wednesday nights, man. Please, AEW fans, get a grip on yourselves, man. Sports always come first priority, not your damn wrestling. Especially on TNT with EJ, Kenny, Shaq, and Charles, man. You can guarantee that. So anyway, let's first talk about Monday Night Raw. Obviously I didn't watch it because the Flippers Game 5 was on. So we had a battle royale to determine who would replace Randy Orton in the Money in the Bank qualifier. The last chance qualifier match, apparently, with AJ Styles and Drew McIntyre, and they never explained why Randy Orton wasn't there at Raw, but I don't know. I didn't read any like dirt sheet bullshit on that. So Matt Riddle won that battle royale, and Matt Riddle, who was already in the Money in the Bank ladder match anyway after beating Drew McIntyre last week, somehow for whatever freaking reason is in the main event. Like, why? Why did Matt Riddle need to win it? Like, out of all the people that could have won it, it could have been Jeff Hardy. Like, what are we doing here? Like, what? Why does people backstage love Matt Riddle's dick so much? Like, I don't get it. I don't get the appeal of Matt Riddle. All he does is ride around his scooter like he's in elementary school. I don't get it. Sure. He's an MMA fighter. He was previously an MMA fighter, but look at the gimmick you gave him. He rides around a scooter. You think that's cool? Come on now. So Nikki Cross, who is in this Mighty Molly ripoff gimmick, defeated Shayna Baszler, and I could care less. And then more Seattle She-Hulk, Russell Wilson-esque, Pete Carroll-esque action that followed that with Asuka and Naomi losing to Eva Marie and Piper Niven, who now goes by Doudrop. Doudrop? I don't know. I just don't care at this point. And Eva Marie, sure, she's but whatever. So next we had Ricochet going up against John Morrison for whatever reason, and that went to a double countout. I don't care. Then we had a 6-woman, so even more Seattle Russell Wilson-esque Seattle She-Hulk action, where Charlotte, Tamina, and Natalya beat Rhea Ripley, Mandy Rose, and Dana Brooke. Like, yeah, that's definitely gonna bring in the viewership. And in a strap match, Elias lost to Jackson Riker, and nobody cared. And in that last chance qualifier, Drew McIntyre beat AJ Styles and Matt Riddle. And I like Drew McIntyre, but I'm just wondering, why is he going to be in this Money in the Bank ladder match when he clearly lost a last chance Hell in a Cell match like 2 weeks ago to Bobby Lashley in the same name like pay-per-view? And don't worry, we're gonna get to that in just a bit. We are literally gonna get to that in just a bit. Like, not the match, but the pay-per-view. Like, we're gonna get to that. So that was Raw. Clearly, from looking at the results, it sucked. But I mean, I guess it wasn't all rematchy, I guess. So that's that. But still, it looked pretty lame. So now let's look at AEW Dynamite and their return to Wednesday night, because all the AEW fans were like sucking AEW's dick so hard that they were clamoring, praising the Lord, because the NBA is finally off their precious Wednesday nights. So we kick off the show with Penta El Zero Miedo, George Kittle's one of his favorite wrestlers, I guess, and Eddie Kingston, and beating the Young Bucks in a tag team eliminator. Nobody cares. And I'm just wondering, where is the rest of Death Triangle? Why is Eddie Kingston suddenly teaming up with Penta? I don't get it. And why do the Young Bucks look like freaking pedos now with their pedo mustaches? It looks so weird. It looks so dumb. Those fucking cucks suck. So then we had a segment where Ethan Page calling out Darby Allin, and Sting brought out the coffin for the coffin match at Fyter Fest. So I don't know when they're doing that. I think later in July, but yeah, that happened. So Jungle Boy beat Jack Evans, whoever the fuck that is, and nobody cares. So the Dork Order went on to confront Kenny Omega, and yeah. Oh, but apparently, I guess this is a little interesting. I mean, at least Hangman Page, Adam Page is going to challenge Kenny Omega. So I guess they're leading up to that at All Out, or I don't know. Hopefully not one of those like events that they're gonna air on TV, like Fyter Fest, Fight for the Fallen, or Road Rage. Like, hopefully they build that up to All Out. And I for as much as I don't like AEW with its like lack of care to storytelling, I hope they at least try to build on the fact that not Kenny Omega, but Hangman Adam Page, on the fact that he lost his first opportunity to win the World Championship against Chris Jericho, the crown, the first AEW World Champion, and how he spent pretty much probably 2 years to build himself back up to get to this point. It's not a hard concept. It's something to get behind Adam Page, whether you like him or not. So at least there is someone that I can kind of care about when it comes to getting rid of this stupid ass Kenny Omega. So there's that. So then we had Miro defeat Brian Pillman Jr. And yeah, that happened. Dr. Britt Baker, DMD, and Rebel defeated Nyla Rose and Vicky Guerrero, and I didn't care. But the thing I saw on Twitter was that Rebel got hurt pretty badly, and hopefully she's okay. And it looks like they're positioning Britt Baker towards a babyface, and honestly, why? She's fine as a heel. She's fine for how she is right now, but considering that there's literally no competition for her, like Chris Statlander is doing other things with Best Friends, and Hikaru Shida, nobody cares about her, but she's still like a babyface, and like all these like weebo like women's wrestlers are pretty much nowhere. And it is like, this is the problem with the women's division. It's kind of like Raw and SmackDown. Like, there is no competition for Britt Baker. Like, you're setting up her up to fail. She has a character, she has mic skills, she has the look, but you're setting up to fail. Like, what are you doing, what is Kenny Omega doing? What are you doing? And this doesn't make any sense. And Nyla Rose is terrible. It's just terrible. So in the main event, MJF beat Sammy Guevara. People were saying this was a great match, but from what the highlights I saw, it was Sleep City. So yeah, that was AEW Dynamite. It's returned to Wednesday nights, and apparently there was also a botch by Jim Ross where he said WWE Dynamite, and I'm just like, JR, what are you doing? But no, JR can't help himself. Like from deep inside, he hates this shit. He really hates this flippity fuck cuck clone bullshit. Just go back to WWE. Stop wasting your time with this bullshit, JR. Stop wasting your time. Vince McMahon will welcome you back with open arms, to be honest with you. So now, let's get into the main topic of the day. The main topic. Gimmick WWE pay-per-views. I touched on it briefly with Bobby Lashley and Drew McIntyre, their last chance Hell in a Cell match for Drew McIntyre. And I really wanted to talk about this because a couple weeks ago, WWE had its Hell in a Cell pay-per-view, and when I first learned that they were having Hell in a Cell in June, I was like, wait, isn't this thing supposed to be in October? Isn't this thing usually in October? But apparently, they didn't want to wait till October. They want to get this thing done in, like now, like in June. They didn't want to wait till October when the fans were going to be back and they could have possibly shit all over this thing. So they just really rushed it out till make it the last pay-per-view in the Blunder Dome. So yeah, apparently, I guess, I don't know what the October thing is going to be, but probably Extreme Rules. But that's besides the point. But the reason why I wanted to talk about this was because they had about four Hell in a Cell matches in the span of a whole weekend. Literally a whole weekend. And I'm just wondering why. Why did we need that many? Like, you're pretty much devaluing a match that was once special. And it came to my mind, it came to my attention that these gimmick pay-per-views, seriously need to stop. And I don't know if WWE wants them to stop due to sponsorships, to partnerships, to corporate, whatever. But I'm being honest with you, these have to stop, because I saw highlights of these and they had no reason to happen. A lot of these gimmick matches, whether it's Hell in a Cell, Money in the Bank, even the championship matches at Night of Champions, Clash of Champions, whatever, TLC, what else do they have now? I think it was, like, those are the main ones. But a lot of these gimmick pay-per-views nowadays, they don't have any reason to happen. They don't. Like, they just happen for the sake of happening. Like, oh, let's just put them in a Hell in a Cell match because, because we can. Like, even though the feud doesn't call for it. Let's say, for example, like, Bad Blood is coming. Like, they used to do this back in 2003 when Triple H and Kevin Nash were feuding. But at least back then, like, they had something to fight for. And apparently Bad Blood was the go-to place for Hell in a Cell matches. But at least when WWE did it, they had reason to go for it. With Triple H versus Kevin Nash for the world title, and then that feud-ending Cell match between Triple H and Shawn Michaels in 2004. What do you have? What do they have here with? Let's use our recent roundup of cell matches. Roman Reigns versus Rey Mysterio. Well, it could have been a good one-on-one match. Like, if it was a feud starter, it ended up being a Hell in a Cell match. Like, why? It didn't need to be a cell match. It could have been a straight-up one-on-one. It could have also been a no-holds-barred or last man standing match. Especially considering the fact that this was just a one-off match for Roman and Rey. Especially considering since that Edge just came back and now is going to challenge Roman Reigns at Money in the Bank. But yeah, we've had that match. While it was all right, it didn't need to happen. It was the first match in their feud. No, the first and only match, but that's besides the point. What is the true reason? Was it because Roman attacked my family, but did it really necessitate or whatever the word is for a cell match that quickly? No, you gotta build this up. You gotta really build this up. You can't just rush these things that quickly. And there were other cell matches at the pay-per-view last month where it just didn't make sense. I mean, the only one that did make sense was Bobby Lashley versus Drew McIntyre, because they've been feuding for months. And Bobby Lashley was getting sick and tired of Drew McIntyre challenging him for the WWE Championship and losing. So, yeah, at least that feud had reason to be inside Hell in a Cell. That should have been the only Hell in a Cell match of that night. But they also screwed up putting the placement of another cell match with Bianca Belair and Bayley. And the only reason they did that was, we need we need to have our agendas put into place. When they clearly don't have anything set in stone. Like, they don't have a proper reason to be in that cell. There was another feud that, for as much as I don't like them, they at least had reason to be in that cell. And that was Seth Rollins versus Cesaro. Because Seth Rollins took out Cesaro for a couple weeks with an arm injury, and Cesaro came back, attacked Rollins. That should have been at least a cell match. Like, for as much as I dislike them because they lack character and personality, that could have been at least a cell match. What was the reason for Bianca Belair and Bayley to be inside the cell? Other than, you're a bully. Bayley's a bully. Bayley likes to laugh very, very stupidly. But it didn't make any sense. And then you had another cell match on Monday Night Raw, because apparently the USA Network was mad at WWE for allowing a free cell match on Fox. So apparently Bobby Lashley faced Xavier Woods inside the cell for no reason. Like, I just that's just overkill to its finest. That is really overkill to its finest. So I know I've kind of jumping around here. I want to talk about these gimmick pay-per-views. I want to talk about these gimmick pay-per-views because they've had, like, WWE's had this history of doing the gimmick pay-per-views since 1988. Obviously with the Royal Rumble, that's at least with the Royal Rumble, it's a household name. It's a household pay-per-view name. You know, the traditional Royal Rumble match, and there's reason for that to exist. Like, it's been a common staple because it bleeds into WrestleMania, because you get a title shot for the championship, world championship of your choosing for the men's, and for the women, you get a women's title match of your choice. So that has reason to stay. And then prior to 2009, when WWE started to experiment with a lot of themed pay-per-views, you would get very few gimmick matches, concept, like very few pay-per-views that would center around these gimmick concepts. Like, unless if a storyline called for it. Like, for example, the 1998 Survivor Series with the tournament for the WWF Championship. And then the King of the Ring pay-per-view. Obviously, a pay-per-view that a lot of fans remember, where it made some breakout stars like Stone Cold Steve Austin, Triple H, Brock Lesnar. And while the crown wasn't really much of an indicator of that, it still helped make some rising stars out of it for that namesake tournament. And then there's also Taboo Tuesday and Cyber Sunday, where fans got to quote unquote vote on various aspects of the show. And I say vote in air quotes because, like, even though they would vote, WWE would kind of rig it to the point where, even though we voted for this, WWE would, like, skew it to a way that, it's the other option. So starting in 2009, for whatever reason, WWE implemented these themed pay-per-views you would see today, like Hell in a Cell, Money in the Bank, TLC. But in 2009, there were some really wild ones. Breaking Point, where you saw that submissions count anywhere match with like DX and Legacy, and that main event submission match, which was, that was not good, between CM Punk and The Undertaker, where they tried to recreate the Montreal Screwjob, and that was terrible. And Bragging Rights, which was pretty much like the concept that you see at Survivor Series nowadays, but obviously it had its own pay-per-view. It's kind of like SmackDown versus Raw in real life. That lasted for 2 years. So it took full center in 2010. So pretty much the gimmick pay-per-views you see today, they started back in 2010. And we could have had 10 years of a fatal four-way pay-per-view. Who couldn't forget the time WWE tried to implement a pay-per-view on the concept of a fatal four-way match, where literally almost every match was a fatal four-way match. That was one of the stupidest things that they did. That was so dumb. I mean, obviously I was a kid back then. I was like in middle school. I honestly had a feeble mind. Like, I didn't think they were that bad. Like, at least, especially the first couple ones, they weren't too bad. Money in the Bank was actually decent. I liked Kane winning the first Money in the Bank World Heavyweight Championship one, and then cashing it in on Rey Mysterio that same night. But the problem was, with these themed pay-per-views, the gimmick matches centered on these pay-per-views were mostly not good. Instead, the matches outside of that, they were sometimes either hit or miss. Like, for example, John Cena versus CM Punk in the main event of Money in the Bank 2011. Also in that that event was Randy Orton versus Christian for the World Heavyweight title. That feud in the summer of 2011 was actually pretty underrated, mind you. Then you had that Undertaker versus Kane rivalry that spanned across Night of Champions and Bragging Rights 2010. And honestly, like, there were a couple more matches, but I can't think of them at the moment. But yeah, like I said before, the gimmick matches, that have the name in it on the pay-per-view, a lot of the times it didn't live up to its name. It really didn't, because again, of oversaturation over time. It just happened way too often. And it didn't feel special anymore. I can only name a few matches that were actually good from the batch of theme pay-per-views we had when the gimmick was, a thing. Like the Money in the Bank ladder match in 2016, when Dean Ambrose, now known as Jon Moxley, won the match and then cashed in that same night when all three members of the Shield were world champions during that time. That was actually pretty cool. Obviously, as I mentioned in that Golden State Warriors retro review, I was really like flipping back and forth between Game 7 and Money in the Bank. I was like on my phone watching the WWE Network, and then Game 7 of the finals were on my screen. But obviously, I'm sidetracking. But continuing on, the Shield versus Team Hell No in the Shield's debut in TLC 2012. Pretty good match right there. Then you also had Becky Lynch versus Charlotte versus Asuka in TLC 2018. But I only like this because of just two reasons. I just wanted Asuka to win because I didn't like Charlotte, and Becky Lynch's man character was starting to I don't know, it's starting to hit a low point for me. And obviously I was there in attendance, so I was kind of like, yeah, I kind of have a bias towards this. So yeah, I was just like, I don't know, in the moment. I was in the moment. And then who can forget Roman Reigns versus Jey Uso inside Hell in a Cell in the last year? Like, that was like one of the best ones. And like, you obviously, if you're a match mark, you're not gonna like it. But if you're a storytelling and character mark like me, you would love this match. You really would. And then the first Elimination Chamber match at the Elimination Chamber pay-per-view, the main event with the World Heavyweight Championship, when Chris Jericho would win it on The Undertaker after Shawn Michaels interfered, which would set up pretty much two WrestleMania matches in hindsight, with Michaels versus Undertaker and Chris Jericho versus Edge for the world title. That actually helped. That was actually pretty good. So yeah, like 5 matches out of how many have we had in the last decade? And that's the thing. That's the problem with these stipulation matches in the past, because they happened because, to be honest with you. But before these stipulation matches, like these stipulation pay-per-views happened, these stipulation matches happened because the storyline called for it. It happened because it needed to happen, not just because a pay-per-view was coming up. And a lot of the times when this reason came to be, like the match needed to happen because it needed to happen, you would see the results pay off. Like, for example, Edge and Christian versus the Hardys and the Dudleys in the first 2 TLC matches at SummerSlam 2000 and WrestleMania 17. The various Undertaker matches inside Hell in a Cell. The first one at Bad Blood versus Shawn Michaels versus Mankind at King of the Ring 1998. The one versus Triple H at WrestleMania 28. And yeah, that's the thing. There's just too much of these matches nowadays that don't happen for any rhyme or reason other than, the pay-per-view is coming up, so we just need to throw these guys inside a Hell in a Cell or a Money in the Bank or a TLC or ladder or chairs or tables or an Extreme Rules or whatever, and let them go at it. That's the problem. They don't happen because they need to happen. They happen just because the pay-per-view is coming up, and like the storyline, even though the storyline doesn't call for it, oh well, we're just gonna put him in that match because we feel like it. And that's why these gimmick pay-per-views need to end. As we've seen for the last half decade plus, especially in the last half decade plus, these gimmick pay-per-views have slowly and surely devalued what was once special stipulation matches. And like I said before, the best example was this past month's Hell in a Cell's marathon matches. I'm not going to go into it further again, but I would rewind the podcast to get a brief reminder of it. And then there's also the upcoming Money in the Bank pay-per-view, where a lot of the participants in both the men's and women's side are jobbers. There's honestly not a believable winner in either side. Sure, you could say Drew McIntyre, but honestly, that would just kind of be a cheap cop-out. For as much as I like him, it would just kind of like, be an endless loop. So, I just don't know. it's just that these matches have no special moments anymore. They don't have any special moments. You would get one in the last decade. Like, the only one I can truly remember that truly sticks out to me is when Jimmy Uso was trying to convince Roman Reigns to come back to the good side. Roman Reigns was crying in the ring, and then all of a sudden he returns back to normal, to his bad self, and then he locks Jimmy Uso in the guillotine, and Jey Uso was forced to quit for the safety of his brother. That was pretty much the only special moment I can remember in the last decade of a themed pay-per-view. And that's the problem. There are no special moments. And that's because there's no build up ahead of time. There's no story ahead of time. The wrestlers involved do not have a character anymore, because apparently wrestling doesn't give a fuck about characters and stories. All they care about is flips, kicks, and all this other bullshit because of the cucks of suck and the fan base that loves matches instead of stories and characters. And they can't have a even balance. And there's just no overall effort that go into these gimmick matches. Back then, wrestlers like Undertaker and Mankind would fight each other for years, whether it's in separate feuds, separate matches on pay-per-view, and even in one-off matches on Raw, leading up to that big Hell in a Cell match at the King of the Ring pay-per-view, or in a Boiler Room Brawl match or whatever at SummerSlam. But nowadays, you get wrestlers like Sasha Banks, Bayley, Becky Lynch, and various others that just fight each other in X, Y, or Z stipulation match for no other reason whatsoever, other than the pay-per-view is literally called X match. That's pretty much it. That's pretty much all that is. So how are you supposed to care about these matches, no matter how good they end up being, for more than 1 week, honestly, or month? Like, how are you supposed to truly remember? How are you supposed to have that good memory of these matches when they don't put in the effort on the most important aspects of wrestling, pro wrestling, stories, characters, and all that good shit? Not the match, not the flips, the spots, and any of that. Short answer, you don't. You honestly don't. So in the end, I just very dislike. I don't hate it completely. If a spot is cool, then it's interesting, especially with whoever the wrestler is. But I really dislike these gimmick pay-per-views. They really need to go away. There's just honestly destroying any lasting legitimacy that a Hell in a Cell, a Money in the Bank, an Extreme Rules, a TLC or ladder or what have you, like the lasting legitimacy any of those matches I just mentioned had. And I don't know why WWE doesn't want to get rid of them. I really don't. We had such cool non-themed pay-per-view names that WWE honestly didn't need to get rid of. Why did we need to go to themed pay-per-views in the first place? Like, we had No Mercy, No Way Out, Unforgiven, Judgment Day, Vengeance. We had those badass names. And sure, we didn't have a theme to them, and we didn't honestly need them. You could have built up the pay-per-view with a good ass card. Even to this day, like, regardless of the wrestling, like, those names at least stand out to people. Like, why do we need a gimmick themed pay-per-view name? So I know it's themed, but you could. I would also be open to seeing Cyber Sunday come back, and honestly, bring a social media element to it too, because it's so prominent than ever. Like, you can make use of polls on Twitter or Instagram for matches, participants. Like, it would be such a great concept. It really would. And I really just want these gimmick pay-per-views to end forever, because these gimmick pay-per-views, like especially Hell in a Cell, Elimination Chamber, TLC, it should be reserved for when a storyline calls for it. Like, let's say when Roman Reigns is facing Edge. This is just an example. And the rivalry has reached a point where they can't face each other in a simple one-on-one match. They get to the point of SummerSlam where they need to face off each other in a, let's say, Hell in a Cell. That's when you call for it. That's when you call for it. Like, they build this up really well, and then you go for Hell in a Cell, then you can go for it. Not just because it's in the name of the pay-per-view. So I honestly want these Gimmick pay-per-views to go away forever. I don't know if WWE ever will. They probably won't, but it would be nice because the names are just like that we once had, like No Way Out, Vengeance, Judgment Day. They're just honestly more memorable than the ones we have now, because honestly, the more we have like a Money in the Bank, Hell in a Cell, Elimination Chamber, a TLC, and even Extreme Rules, the less special they'll be, because Money in the Bank doesn't even feel special, especially the participants that come out of it. Hell in a Cell just feels like a McDonald's playpen. The Elimination Chamber is pussified, and I honestly don't know what else to say about TLC. It's just a one-match show. So I don't know if WWE will ever go back to those cool names, like those non-themed pay-per-view names, mainly due to the soft-ass culture we have now. But like I said before, the pay-per-view names we have back then are at least more recognizable, and they bring in the gimmick matches when they call for it, are more recognizable than the gimmick-themed pay-per-views we have now. But at the end of the day, it's just my thoughts, my very casual opinions on this subject matter, and I'm just getting tired of it. I'm just getting tired of these gimmick pay-per-views, and it does nothing but hurt the overall product and the overall aura, the specialty of a Hell in a Cell, a Money in the Bank, all these special matches that were once special in WWE. And I just want these gimmick pay-per-views to go away. So those are just my thoughts on the gimmick pay-per-views. What do you guys think on these pay-per-views, like Money in the Bank, Hell in a Cell, Night of Champions, Elimination Chamber, specifically the gimmick ones, like where they have like a match type, not like a themed one like Night of Champions, Cyber Sunday, or whatnot, like the specific match types like Extreme Rules and all that. Let me know in the comments, or shoot me a comment on Twitter or Instagram or YouTube. Let me know how you feel about this, and I would love to hear your take on this subject matter. But anyway, that is it for this episode of Very Cold Lasagna. I'm your host, DylanLasagna. Thank you for joining me on episode 30, and make sure to follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Very Cold Lasagna, and listen to the show here on YouTube, Anchor, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. And as always, keep that lasagna very cold in the fridge with your take on the world of wrestling and sports in general. And until next time, peace out.